What's up guys, today we're going to be reviewing and ranking a bunch of IEMs again, and starting with the much anticipated Dunu BRAINDANCE. This is a very capable set technically, but it does need a lot of work because sound wise the amount of planar timbre it has is sizzlier than when I'm frying bacon. Now I did try with the ohm adapter as well, more on that later, but let's first start with the positives in its stock unaltered configuration sound. Detail and technical performance wise, the BRAINDANCE is very good stock. In fact, it's probably one of the best when it comes to performance under $1,000, and competes with sets that are much more expensive. You get a really good sense of air and space, as well as layering and instrument separation is very clean and clear. The bass is tight, is very well controlled, and it doesn't have any bass bleed when it comes to the mids, and you get a lot of micro details when it comes to the treble. However, as good as it is technically, the tonality will be a huge turn off to many people. It's thin and lean sounding, bright leaning but also thin at the same time, but also very artificial and unnatural when it comes to the timbre, especially in the treble. I honestly don't know who at Dunu thought it was a good idea to put in 4 planars in one IEM, so 8 in total on both sides, when 1 or 2 planars was already pushing it in terms of just the overall timbre and when it comes to planar sizzle. But then on top of that, they also proceed to boost the treble even more and then give it no bass. For reference, the Dusk was already pushing it in terms of planar sizzle and timbre, and that only had 2 microplanars, half of the BRAINDANCE, and it also had a lot less upper mids and treble as well, not nearly as boosted. So you can only imagine how much more sizzly it is with an additional 2 extra planars and then boosting the treble on top of the additional planars. What? But that's not all, folks, because on top of this boosted planar treble and the extra microplanars, the brain damage also doesn't have a bass tilt or just the amount of low end to balance out the sizzle, because for some reason they decided to also tilt the sound towards the upper mids and treble as well, which was already boosted and sizzly. What ends up happening is that not only is there not enough fullness because of the lean low end, but it's also thin, has microplanar, has a lot of planar sizzle, and it's also tilted towards the treble, which highlights the sizzliness even more. It's just doing too much now. It's distracting, it's unnatural, the treble sounds artificial, it sounds needle-like, especially on songs with a lot of cymbals, electronic elements. It's not peaky or sharp perhaps, but it's just too much sizzle. For example, Model by Lee Dong Hao is basically unlistenable past 60 dBs because of just how much sizzle and energy there is to the cymbals. It has a lot of cymbals in that song, so it's very noticeable and very obvious when it crashes. K-pop and J-pop tracks also sound off. The cymbals and the electronic elements are just over highlighted. The vocals sound thin, they sound weak, and don't even think about using these for hip-hop and rock. It doesn't have enough low end. The rumble isn't there, the weight, the slam isn't there, the impact isn't there. Drums and bass lines feel weak. It feels thin because of the small scoop, and yes, there is also a small scoop on top of the already lean, bright, sizzly, bright tilting sound. Amazing. So basically, Dunu just made a worse version of the variations. The brain damage isn't nearly as smooth and natural in the treble because they decided to use 4 off-branded planars to save some money instead of using actual real Sony and ESTs. Compared to the variations, the sub-bass texture, the rumble is noticeably not as impactful, it's not as engaging, even though the scoop isn't as big as the variations, but that doesn't actually even matter because everything on the brain damage is tilted upwards with less sub-bass anyways. So it's still gonna sound thin regardless of how much it's getting scooped. And don't even think about scaling and higher volumes. This is a low volume set. I don't recommend listening to this past 60 dBs, or just in general, you shouldn't buy this stock. There are just way better options. Again, the variation is a good example. And if you bought them already, I'm sorry bro, I hope you can still return them, but there is a saving grace. This is an ohm adapter and it is mandatory and crucial to have with the brain damage if you want to sound moderately just natural or good. You don't have to get an 80 ohm adapter like me. 10 to 30 ohms, it's gonna do the job. It's gonna balance out the thinness, it's gonna tame down the treble, it's gonna help the overall sound to be more natural, more enjoyable, it's gonna hide some of that sizzle, and it changes from brain damage to now actually brain dance because it's actually enjoyable now with the ohm adapter. And if you mess around with the 80 ohm adapter, you turn the brain dance into a bass headset even, it's pretty good. The driver is pretty solid. with the OM adapter, it's very fun, it's very punchy bass, good texture. And then if you add Senkai tips on top, you actually get a good set after applying 2 additional mods. Now you're still gonna get that sizzly planar timbre, but at least it's not thin and too unnaturally sounding now. So in conclusion, stock wise, even though it is very good technically like the Cantor, the tonality is just not good, it's not natural, it has its issues. But if you add a ohm adapter, like 10 ohm adapter, 20, 30, I would actually recommend these. They actually sound pretty well balanced. It still has that planar sizzle, but it is more well controlled now. However, stock wise, I would not recommend these. It turns from brain dance to brain damage stock, and then it turns back to brain dance with the ohm adapter. But moving on, we have the ARTTI T10 Pros, the successor to the original T10s, which was and still is a value monster. Compared to the OG, which was more balanced, it's more all-rounded and closer to Harman 2019, the T10 Pros is much warmer, it's bassier, not as clean, but it's still airy, and I would say it's still pretty enjoyable in general. It has a lot more bass than the OGs, the vocals are more laid back, there's less shout in the 2K region, it's less bright, it scales better, followed by more air as well, and the overall sound is warm but still airy, and it reminds me of a mini Symphonium Meteor. Now if you already have the T10s, the better upgrade in terms of pure performance will still be the SIMGOT ET142, whereas the T10 Pros are more of a side grade. The T10 Pros remind me of the Timeless 2 with its silver nozzles, but just a little bit warmer, not as technical, and value wise the original T10s will still be the king there. But if you want to try a mini Symphonium Meteor, if you want like a cheaper Timeless 2, then these would be a good pick, and I do recommend them because the sound is different and unique enough. Next we have the JUZEAR A1Ts, and these are basically a mini Volaire. It's got a clean and balanced sound, it's pretty good technically, good separation and layering, it's got a punchy bass, the solid treble extension as well. It's not going to be as smooth, technical and natural as the Volaire with the ESTs because they can get a bit metallic when it comes to timbre with the custom BAs. But if you're looking for something, you know, Harman, these would be a good pick for an all-rounder. The only real issue is that because there's already so many Harman inspired IEMs, you could really just get the Super Mix 4 or the Nova. They're almost 2 times cheaper if you want something, you know, Harman and still very close technically. So because of the current competition, I'm gonna put this in maybe because it's not a very unique, you know, sounding IEM. It's Harman 2019, and you can get what it does for much cheaper with the Super Mix 4 and the Nova. Then after that, we have the NICEHCK NX8, which is very similar to the Odyssey, Arcadias, and the Explorer. So if you already have the Explorer, Odyssey, or like you're thinking of buying them, you don't really need to get these. Again, very similar sound wise. It's relaxing at mid volume, it sounds better as you give it more scaling, the vocals pop out more, and overall the sound just sounds more balanced as it gets higher in the volume. Now even though this is a solid set, the problem is if you want a cleaner sound that also scales very well, you already have the Odysseys, those just do the cleaner scaling sound much better. And if you want something bassier with good scaling, you got the Arcadias, it just got better bass. So in terms of like specialization, those two does the bassy and cleaner sound better, whereas the NX8 is kind of like in between them like the Explorer. If you found the vocals on the Explorer to be a bit too laid back, these are better when it comes to vocals, they pop out a bit more. But the thing is, if we're talking about pure scaling, the Explorer still scales better, the vocals become more natural, it fixes itself with better scaling, and they also have a very similar sound. So I guess if you want, you know, something that scales a little bit more than the Odysseys, but you're not quite cranking them up like the Explorer, I guess that's where the NX8 would come in. But it is a very redundant sound given that all the other 3 exist. So because it's so redundant, I would say maybe, but probably just get the other 3. Now as for the HBB ELUA, when I first saw the graph, I was a bit scared, not gonna lie, but don't worry, it's just a bassy V shape. It's a pretty fun set. I do recommend deeper fitting tips and not shallow fits because the vocals can sound a bit masked and a bit like recessed and buried with like a shallower fit. So you want to get like right in there with the tips. I'm using these Senkai regulars and they sound pretty good. Not a vocal set obviously, but it does help balance things out better. I was also surprised by the amount of air you get with these, given that it is a 2DD set, it doesn't have any BAs, and combine that with the sundering low end, the texture on the bass, it gives you like this very dynamic and slightly sparkly sound. The treble and vocals do their job, but the main focus of the show would probably be the bass. It's very punchy, it's rumbly, it slams nice, it has lots of engagement and weight when it comes to the low end, and the low-key almost has as much bass as the punch, but just a little bit more energetic. Am I saying ELUA is a mini punch? sure. I think it does have similar characteristics. Obviously, the bass texture is still much better on the punch, as well as just the overall vocal extension, detail, timbre. But for $30, I think the ELUA is a fun, bassy, slight V-shaped sound, and I would recommend these. On the other hand, I have a very underrated IEM, the BQ10 from BQEYZ. Also surprised me because it's a warm set but with good dynamics, which you don't often see in a warm set, especially at $30. For the price, the mid-bass texture is very good. You feel the notes, it's thicker, it's not soft and smooth in the resolution, it's heavy, it sounds nice, and it doesn't ruin the vocals completely. Now, is it a clean and balanced vocal set? No, it's slightly colored, it's warm leaning, it's thicker, it could use more extension, more clarity, just openness in general when it comes to the vocals, but it does its job. The vocals aren't buried or they're not like ruined, and they're not sharp either, and you're gonna be fine. Now, compared to the ELUA, the BQ10 is less sub-bass focused, it's a little bit less rumbly, it's less bassy, but it does have more mid-bass impact, it's warmer, not as energetic. And when it comes to resolution and performance, the BQ10 isn't gonna beat other stuff like the EW200, the Q1 Pros. Still does the job technically, and I dig it for what it does when it comes to R&B, hip-hop, pop, and rock. So I would recommend this if you want to try something different from a quote-unquote normal tuning. However, a set I would maybe avoid would be the TRIPOWIN VIVACE, and it's not because it's a bad set or anything. It sounds fine. It sounds basically like the EW300, but less detailed and less airy. But the problem is the confined clean exists for a bit more, like $10 to $15 more, depending if you get it on sale or not. And it's just the better pick overall over the VIVACE. The clean's got slightly better treble extensions, a little bit more airier, it's a little bit more detailed. It's got a whole nother tuning switch that makes it, you know, like even more detailed than the stock tuning. It's got more variety as well. The overall build, cable, and case is also just much better on the clean. So if you could, I would personally just get the clean, or even better, jump straight to the EW300, which would be the direct upgrade to the clean and the VIVACE. But an exception would be if you can't get the VIVACE for around $20 on sale, then I would say it is worth it, because that makes it half the price of the clean. Retail wise, at around $30, probably not. I'll put it at maybe, because I did see the clean go for as low as $35. So at that price, I would just get the clean. But moving on for some quick speed runs, starting off with the Timeless 2. If you're looking for your first planar, or if you want to try some different planar profiles, then these would be a great pick. They offer a lot of variety when it comes to tuning nozzles. They actually work. You know, the sound is smoother than other planars. It's very little planar timbre. It has good technical performance. Most people are going to enjoy these. It's going to work for pretty much every library, and it doesn't have a controversial tuning like the ET142. Now, the fit can be a bit of a potential issue for smaller ears, because it has like this awkward round circle, you know, design. Overall, like the Timeless 2 is just a very solid package, and yeah, I would recommend it. On the other hand, the ET142 is one of the most technical planars, up there with the Brain Damage. Sorry, I mean the Brain Dance, but it might turn some people off depending on your preference, because it is bright leaning like the original S12s. It has similar amount of like brightness. It has that 2K peak. Some people can find it a bit too shouty, a bit too unnatural for the vocals. They are both bright leaning, sparkly, and with the difference being that the 142 is just less sizzly in the treble with a slight tech bump over the S12s. So if you like the original S12s, then yeah, I would rec the 142, since it's basically just a more refined and slightly better version of the original S12s. But if you like the S15s, the S08 type of sound, you know, you like a tamer, more relaxed upper mid gain region in the 2K, then something like the Timeless 2 with the silver nozzles or the S15 would probably be the better pick. And then lastly, we got the HBB Punch, and for bass heads, this is top tier. It's basically end game bass head set. I like the Punch more than the Origin and Titans. It's not going to be as technical as those sets, but the bass texture and the slam is just as good, and you get even more bass now without being muddy and still pretty well balanced. So like for bass heads, we want more bass, right? So that's why I would recommend these very highly for bass heads. You can also find these for like $360 to $400 on sale, and they got ESTs as well. So yeah, kind of a no-brainer for bass heads, top tier. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope this review slash speedrun ranking was helpful. My voice is once again dead. Congrats to the giveaway winners from last video. Don't forget to email me to claim your goodies, and the giveaway is still happening until New Year, so comment below. Good luck everyone, have fun, happy holidays, and I'll see everyone in the next video.
Shout out to Rorik's Cat, Dom Q, Star Buccaneers, Disco Scottus, B Urac, Mystic Spoon Attack, Walker Standard, User, Patrick, Polly J, Mr. Gorillas, Anton Risto, Gis Sang Young, Ed Dunlap, Christopher Jackson, Name, Henry Claudia, Son of a Horse, 777ZK, Ben Thompson, Obi, Triple Well Extended, Wizard, Frickalicious, Andrick, Ricardo, Tapas R, Chuckle Norris, Asher, Oh Really, Contain Guava Juice Gains, Xuan Bak Lee, and Nico. Thank you guys so much.